Di-da-di-da-di-dam. Hej skål, kop, drønn, hej skål, kop, drønn, hej skål. Vi blir til morgengry.
We just got back from a Viking hike, and I just wanted to share some of the experiences with you. We literally just got home, we've unpacked some stuff, and I took my braid out, which is why my hair is all fluffy. I'm sitting here in my tunic and I'm having some thoughts. First of all, let me tell you about the hike. We were 6 people hiking, and the hike was for 3 days, so that's 3 days of walking and 2 camps, and we carried all the food with us. So what we brought with us was some kale, a few eggs, some turnips, some dried meat, some nuts, and some dried fish. We also baked these delicious small flatbreads that we took with us. We also brought some apples and and a piece of bacon. We brought quite a lot of food with us because we didn't know if there would be any berries. Because we were going as high as 1200 and 1400 meters altitude. And as we assumed there were no berries, I think we found in total of 10 blueberries and maybe 7 cloudberries. So those were more like a delicious treat. First day we didn't walk that far, maybe 6 or 7 kilometers. I know that doesn't sound like much, but when you're walking in this kind of terrain, it really feels like twice. And also there's quite a lot of marsh, so your feet are constantly sinking. Also it's quite steep. In the evening we made camp, and it took me about an hour to get the fire going because everything was a little bit damp. But I managed in the end, which was a great victory. The first evening in the camp we made a porridge of barley grains, bacon and onions. It was quite tasteless, but it was good and it really fills your stomach. It gives you the fat and the carbohydrates that you need. And then after a good night's sleep, I think everybody slept quite okay. The funny thing though was that there was nowhere flat to put the camp, so we were in a slope kind of, and one of the participants continuously slid down, so he ended up with the tarp like right here, which was kind of funny. I slept like a rock, because I always do. I love sleeping outside, on my reindeer pelt with my blanket all cuddly. The morning after, I had to get the fire going again. I was hoping that there would be some embers left from last night, but it wasn't, so I had to start all over again, and everything was really damp, so it took me another 45 minutes to make the next fire. But we managed, and then for breakfast we had another kind of porridge. It's called velling in Norwegian. It's basically just flour and water. And then we mixed that with some apples. And then I had snuck with me like a small jar of honey that everybody got 1/2 spoon of honey each to mix in it, and everybody was really happy. Also in the first camp we were sitting on the rocks in the evening watching the sun set and rise, and one of the participants was telling the tale about Balder, and he explained why you sometimes get tears in your eyes when you get the wind in your face. It's called Balder's tears. You have to hear that story, it's amazing. And he was also telling tales about the trolls and the Norwegian mythological creatures. It was really nice. He's a really good storyteller. So the second day we are hiking further into the mountains, and the terrain is getting worse, but the view is even more spectacular. We passed a huge marshland, and then we climbed one mountain, and then we were walking on top of that mountain, which was really awesome, and then we started to climb down from it. The hike the second day was really long, I would say about 15 kilometers. And again, it doesn't sound much, but it's really a lot when the terrain is this harsh and you're carrying all that heavy Viking stuff, and it's just like totally tearing up your shoulders. And we made camp by this awesome old Sami Seide, which is an old Sami ritual place and also a natural sleeping shelter. So there's a huge rock that's leaning and you can sleep under it, and then there's stones around that humans built probably 1,000 years ago as a small entrance. And we camped just behind that, and we wanted to make one of the participants sleep in the Sami Seide shelter because he snores like a pig, but he refused, so he stayed in camp with us and kept another participant awake. Our camp the second day was really, really cozy. We managed to find this awesome design for the tarp where it was like lifted up so it looked like a palace. I spent a lot of time getting the fire going this time as well because everything was still damp. But when we managed, I made the stew consisting of grey peas, dried meats, onions, and turnips. That took forever to boil because grey peas is a bitch. It never ever fucking boils. So after waiting for 3 hours, we were just so hungry that we just ate them. But they were still hard and they tasted like shit. And the next day they came out whole. I had a really good night's sleep. One of the participants again slid out of the tarp, which is kind of funny. He didn't even notice. And the snoring guy stayed in the tarp, and the person that was annoyed by the snoring moved out of the tarp and slept under the open sky. I think that was the only way she could get some peace from the snoring. The morning after, when we woke up, it was super foggy and really, really misty. And we had no possibility to know what time it was because we couldn't see the sun. And also it's quite weird in Norway around this time because the sun is kind of always up now. So during the day when there's no clouds, we're also confused about what time it is, but we can kind of tell if it's like morning, midday, afternoon, or late or early evening. But now, since it was so foggy, we had no idea. So it could have been like 6 in the morning or 12 in the day. We didn't know, but we decided just to have breakfast and pack up and then start to go. And for breakfast, we had a mixture of kale, onions, and eggs and some dried meats. It was really, really delicious. And I added a spoon of butter in the mix to make it super, super delicious. We didn't use the dry fish for cooking in the pot, we just ate it. And it's a really, really fascinating thing to eat because there are like these tiny, tiny, tiny bones. I've had the fish a lot of times, so I know how to peel it. But we had an Australian girl and a Spanish girl with us that had no fucking idea how to peel it, so they kept getting like these small bones in their throat. And the Spanish girl actually had the bone in her throat from the first lunch the first day and through the entire trip, and I feel really, really sorry for her. The dried fish was a herring. It's really fatty and it tastes like just like liver cod oil, and it's quite salty. It doesn't necessarily taste delicious, but it's really, really good to keep your energy level up. It gives you all the fat and the protein that you need. Also, we know that this dried herring was something that the Vikings definitely ate, and it's been eaten in Norway for 1,000 years, and it's what saved a lot of Norwegian lives before the potato. Because you know, Vikings didn't have potatoes. The last day we had quite a stretch in front of us to get back to the cabin, so I would say we walked between 15 and 20 kilometers, also in hard terrain. The cool thing about the last day is that we walked through this mountain passage, which we just from now on will call Casa Doom, because it was totally fucking awesome. You walk into it, there's like these piles of rocks on both sides, and there were 2 falcons continuously flying over us because we were probably quite close to their nest. And we were kind of just these tiny, tiny creatures going through this enormous passage in the mountain. And the fog was just creeping up behind us, and we came to the middle of the passage and we found this lake inside of the mountain passage. It was this beautiful, clear, green and blue water. Bathing happened a couple of times during this hike, so we actually took all our clothes off and had a swim in 2 Arctic lakes. Since it's been so hot, the water level was quite low, so the water that was in there had actually gotten heated a little bit. And when I say heated, it was probably about 12 degrees, which is a total luxury. And at the top of the mountain that was 1,400 meters high, there was a small pond. It wasn't really deep enough to swim in it, but we got in it anyway to cool off. Normally when we hike in the mountains like this, it's really, really cold, so we don't even want to take 1 layer of wool off. But this time we had like 20, 25 degrees and the sun was just scorching. I don't know if you can tell, but I have a sunburn, or as we would say in Norwegian, a tan. I was kind of fortunate during this hike because I put a linen shirt under my 2 woolen shirts, which meant that I could, when it was really hot, take my clothes off and just walk in the linen shirt. That's like nice for 2 minutes, and then you feel the wind and you get freezing and you have to put the woolen shirt on again, and it just continues like that. You put things on and off and on and off. But 3 of the participants actually only had 2 layers of thick wool, and they were really, really hot, and it got really itchy because of all the sweat. So I don't envy them that. Coming out of the mountain passage, we actually found 7 cloudberries, which is so awesome. I don't know if you ever tasted cloudberries, but after a long hike with nothing sweet except for the spoon of honey, the cloudberries are just such a welcome surprise. And if you haven't seen them, they kind of look like small brains. They're really awesome. Walking back, we walked on the side of this river, which is usually like really broad and violent. But since it's been so hot and dry, almost all the rivers had dried out, and there was just a small like twinkle of water running through them, which was really weird. And it kind of made things more complicated for us as well, because we're so spoiled with the water. We have just a small flask of water with us, and then you can stop and drink in every small stream and a creek. And then you refill the bottle and you just don't have to think about water. But this time, only every 10th stream had water. The rest of them were completely dried off. And according to the mountain rule, you should never drink water that's not moving. So we couldn't really drink from all the streams either, because the water wasn't moving enough. So when we were deciding where to put our camps, we were very peculiar about placing the camp next to a stream that had enough running water. So the first day that was a small stream. Second day that was a huge lake. The water was so still that you could see the reflection from the mountains in the water, and you couldn't really tell that there was water there, which was really cool. We mostly walk in silence when we hike, but we also talk about certain kinds of plants and moss and lichen. I don't know how to pronounce it. And we also come across some hunting pits from like 1,000-year-old hunting pits used by the Sami when they were hunting reindeers. We can talk about them. We can talk about rock formations. We can talk about glaciers from the Ice Age, like how they shaped the mountains and valleys. We can also kind of see where there used to be lakes, so we talk about that. And yeah, we talk about trees and animals and pretty much everything that we see. But we do also walk in silence, and I had a lot to think about, and I was thinking a lot during this hike. And I was generally reflecting on how much at peace I feel when I am out in nature, compared to when I have to do stuff in a more city-like environment. I love relating to a few people. We were 6 people on this hike, which gave me plenty of time to get to know these 6 individuals very good. I also like the pace of everything, so it takes me an hour to make fire, it takes me another 3 or 4 hours to cook, and I really, really do appreciate all the food that I eat. Nothing gets thrown away, we eat everything and we cook with everything. We don't even throw away like the peelings, we just cook something and make something out of it. I also really like the idea that nothing is adapted for me. I'm a guest in an environment. And if I find a nice place to sit or a nice sitting position, I'm just really, really happy. Whereas at home, everything is designed for my pleasure, which is kind of not good, because I like being a little bit discomfortable so that I appreciate being comfortable. I don't know if that makes sense. I also really enjoy being physically tired. When you walk and it feels like you just can't take another step, and then you know that there is a reward in the end, you know that you will reach camp. After you make the fire, gather the firewood, put the tarp up, sit down and cook the meal, you will have a meal, and then it feels so nice to go to sleep. And this is like the reward that I need, and it's such a special reward. And then 200 meters from our final destination, the last day, something purely magical happened. So some local kids had put up a shed with a poster, and on the poster it said, "We have cookies and coffee. Just leave 10 kroners in the box and take whatever you want." And you can imagine 6 starving, tired Vikings just eaten their last turnip 3 hours ago, and then walking a lot of kilometers, and then I was stupid enough to open the box of chocolate cake. And I showed it to everybody. I said, it's chocolate cake. And then there's 6 hungry Vikings throwing themselves over the chocolate cake like rah, rah, rah. And then we left it, just the crumbs. We left money, of course. More than they asked, actually, because we were so happy. We walked the 200 last meters to the cabin, and we had beer. So